Welcome to WBN 001. We're joined here today with Mia Love. Mia Love is a candidate in the race for the newly formed 4th Congressional District seat. Mia, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. We're going to have this in 3 segments. The first part, we'll have Mia tell everyone a little bit about her. We'll go into the questions, and then we'll let Mia finish up with a little talk about what she is as a candidate and what she intends to do. The questions have been divided into 2 parts. The questions total 8. 5 of those Mia has been given in advance. The other 3 Mia has not seen, and she'll be asked during this Q&A. Mia, thanks again so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Take a few minutes and tell people about Mia Love.
Okay, great. Well, my name is Mia Love. I was born in New York, raised in Connecticut. I am the daughter of parents that immigrated to this country legally. They had $10 in their pockets, and they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and worked very hard for everything that they have. On the first day of college, I actually took my dad with me because he's the fun parent, and he said something to me very serious, and it's one of those times where you tune in when you know your parents are going to say something profound. And he said, "Mia, your mother and I have done everything we could to get you here. We've worked hard for everything we have. We've never taken a handout. You will not be a burden to society. You will give back." And that is something that has stayed with me for a long time. I graduated from the University of Hartford with a fine arts degree, and I'm really excited and happy to see what we can do to turn this country around. I am the mayor of Saratoga Springs. I was on the city council 6 years previous to that, and I was elected 60% of the votes as the mayor of Saratoga Springs. And we've led our city to the highest bond rating available, and our city is now financially successful and viable, and hopefully will remain so for the next 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah, and you do this all while juggling being a wife and a mom at the same time. Mm-hmm. So, alrighty, so here we'll go into these questions. Question number 1. Mm-hmm. A major reason you are running for Congress is because you feel the government's current policies are crippling Americans by giving everyone everything, by saying that we are entitled to everything. We're not entitled to anything we don't earn. The programs, incentives, and destruction within the government's current policies are enormous, to say the least. What approach needs to be taken in determining what policies should point blank be ended?
Wow. Well, first of all, there are several things that should just be ended. I don't see any reason for the NLRB. They've actually been very successful at getting rid of major companies or trying to get rid of major companies like Boeing. I don't see any reason for the Department of Education to exist on a federal level. I believe that states can do a better job, and I believe that when states are able to compete, then the people that win, it's our children. Through higher education. But we've got to put entitlements on the table, because really that's the biggest chunk of where our spending is going: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Now, we certainly don't want to pull the rug out from under those who are on Social Security today or will be immediately going into Social Security. But there are certain things that we can do to make it viable, or at least to make it sustainable and get it out of the $6.5 trillion that it's in today. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's increasing the age of retirement. There's adjusting the bend points. There's taking the highest 35 years to the highest 40 years of earnings. There's also means tested programs. So if you made about $200,000, you don't collect maybe 100% of Social Security. There are things that we can do, but we all have to kind of get together and have the guts to do it.
Sure, yeah. Question number 2. For far too long, we've been nudged from religious freedoms that form the underpinnings of our great nation and into a religious oppression almost. We can't allow this fundamental liberty to continue being trampled. Some say that praying in public, that's promoted as almost controversial, maybe even a bad idea, whereas taking the Pledge of Allegiance out of the school is almost kind of promoted as a good idea. Regardless of one's religious beliefs, if they live a life of goodness where they aspire to promote love, understanding, and a value system that's based on teachings of a higher level, it's difficult to not want these people as a foundation in America. What steps should be taken to win back our religious freedoms?
Well, let's just First of all, I got involved in city council. One of the things that drove me to get involved in even city councils when they were actually having the discussion about taking God out of the pledge. And I remember teaching my 1.5-year-old to recite the pledge the way I recited it, and that is with under God, with it being there. But there are things that we can that if we had our policymakers, our Congress, and even the executive branch actually do what they were sworn to uphold, we wouldn't be in trouble, and that is to follow our Constitution and our First Amendment rights. That is exactly where we should start, and hold people accountable for the document that they swore to uphold.
Excellent. The next question 3. Excessive government regulation is stifling business growth, profits, and innovation, which negatively impacts jobs. We must rein in some regulatory agencies and eliminate others. Give an example of this from the problem to the solution as you see it. Also outline the criteria that you use in deciding if action is needed against the government regulation.
Well, you said this is like a 10-minute segment, right?
Yeah. This will be, I'm sure, it's a very condensed.
Okay. Well, let me give you an example. American Electric Power. It's a company based out in Ohio. They're a utility-based company. Because of the EPA's New Clean Air Act, they had to close down 6 of their power plants and pull back on the other 5. The rest of the cost of compliance went to the consumer. So that means the 600 people that just lost their job went home to a higher bill.
And no
a
job.
Higher electric bill with no job. And that pulls them in instead of helping them become sustainable and helping the private sector bring in wealth and bring in resources into their community. We've eliminated that, and we've also made it so that these people now are eligible to be in on some of the welfare systems.
Goes back to the entitlements that you talked on
So we're
first.
certainly, for an administration that cares so much about jobs, we're doing everything we can to get rid of them. And I think it's absolutely Washington is backwards. We incentivize and reward bad behavior and punish good behavior.
Yeah. Question number 4. American society must return to valuing and rewarding hard work, independence, and personal responsibility. Government dependency on entitlement programs and welfare is a failure. This is a statement that receives a large response from a lot of people. However, the response seems to always include 2 parts: those that receive the entitlements and the welfare, and those that create and authorize the entitlements and the welfare. If elected, how would you approach solving the problem?
Well, it is a big problem. Over 50% of Americans believe that it's okay to take from one and give to another, and they believe that it's federal government's job to do that for them. And we've got to start changing the way we deliver the message by sending a different messenger. We've got to allow our fellow Americans to come along with us, because that's really the way that we're going to change the direction that we're in. As long as our fellow Americans believe that it's okay to take from one and give to another, they're going to continue to elect that representative that's going to do that for them. And we need to say, hey, this is not the way you're going to realize the truth of the American dream. It's certainly not the way my father was able to come to this country with $10 in his pocket. I'm a product of hard work. I'm a product of how things work and how realizing the truth of the American dream. And if we are going to take care of people from cradle to grave, there will never be enough money.
Yeah, interesting way to put it. I haven't heard that, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with that. Question number 5. What's your position on illegal immigration?
Okay, well, it's a symptom of a bigger problem, and that bigger problem is the lack of security on our borders. There are several things, again, just to try and keep this as short and concise as possible. We can go into all of the symptoms of the lack of security on our borders, but 3 things aren't happening. We're not securing the borders. We're not tracking visas that are leaving the country. We can track them coming in, but we're not tracking them leaving the country. And we're not creating a rule of naturalization, a uniform rule of naturalization, which is supposed to be created by Congress under Article 1, Section 8. So there are 3 things that I've come up with. One is we've got to at least allow our border security agents to pursue on public lands. They can't even do that right now without finding a spare horse somewhere. 2, one of the things that I've brought up is to see if we can take a bond and put on a visa. So when people are coming in, they put a bond down, and then when they're leaving, they can actually collect portions of that bond and leave. We can actually track a large portion of that bond. We can actually track who leaves because they're not leaving without their money. And certainly, I would prefer for somebody would prefer to come in instead of paying $5,000 to a coyote and risk dying, on the trek in to the desert. Then, I think that a front row approach. But last but not least, it is, again, Article 1, Section 8. It is Congress's job to create a rule of naturalization, a uniform rule of naturalization. That means a pathway in. There are people that are here today that work, that want to contribute, that can contribute, and will not be a burden to society, and they don't have a way in. Again, it's incentivizing and rewarding bad behavior and punishing good behavior. It's easier to be here illegally than it is to be here legally.
Yeah, and to clarify for the listeners, there are cases where there are individuals that have gone from adolescence to adulthood that are illegal, but they have known nothing other than this country. So, that is noted. Okay, the 3 questions that you haven't heard. You've stated you believe a lot of the candidates have made clear a stand as far as their position on gay marriage. With that comes a question that is, without an amendment to the Constitution defining marriage as between a man and a woman, do you believe that it would be unconstitutional to enact or enforce any laws against a U.S. citizen based or guided by the citizen's color, their race, their religion, their gender, and their sexual preference?
Well, yes, I do support marriage between a man and a woman. That's certainly what I do, what I teach my children in our homes, and what we should. I believe federal government should try and protect the family. We've got to be very careful when we make amendments to the Constitution. For instance, if you see the 14th Amendment is being completely used differently than what it was intended to be used for.
Right.
When it was put in there, it was to address one problem, and now it's being used to deal with parts of illegal immigration.
Yeah.
So we've got to be very careful. What I'd like is we've got to find a way to get morals back again into the American people, and we are founded under a belief in God.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't shy away from that.
All right. Next question. This is a kind of a condensed question. It's very popular with a lot of people. Basically, it comes down to you have the people that are working hard and contributing in society. They're being asked to pick up the people who are not or that choose not to contribute. And I think you've already answered this really in a lot of the other questions, but it would just be what should be done to fix the problem. But again, I think you already answered this, but go ahead.
Well, I'll give you another example. We spend over $900 billion in the efforts to end poverty, and it's done nothing to end poverty. As a matter of fact, if we were to actually take that money and just give it to people, a family of 3 would make over $50,000. But as we all know, the programs continue to grow and grow and grow, which means more people are going into the program. And the problem with the program is that we have to spend too much money for the bricks and mortars to administer the programs. There's a lot of abuse in those programs. And again, our policies incentivize and reward bad behavior and punish good behavior. So if somebody goes out and works a little bit, then they lose all of the benefits, and so it incentivizes people to not do that.
Yeah.
We've got to change that, and we've got to make sure that we rein in those programs, because dependency on government is never going to get you to where you're going to be. It's got to be hard work.
Yeah.
And the things that I've said, my parents taught me that we're not entitled to anything that we don't own, earn, work for, or pay for ourselves.
All right, and then the last question, and just put out to everybody, she did not see these questions, just in how she's responding. She's hitting on these questions before they're asked, which says a lot, I think, about you. So here's the last question, and it comes actually from another delegate that approached me on this issue, wanting it to be put out there. Aside from the military, many government officials from the federal level down to the city level raise their right hand and they take an oath. Many of the problematic situations we face likely wouldn't exist if their oath was upheld. Every individual government official, if you ask them, will tell you, I have upheld that oath to the highest of standard. It's not me, yet here we are. If elected, what solutions can you offer a public who is truly becoming more and more disillusioned by this occurring and really wants to participate in solving the problem of it?
Well, there are two things that I've always said that I believe threaten our freedom and our sovereignty. One is the debt. The other one is the constant trampling of the Constitution. And again, you swear to uphold the Constitution. People need to be held accountable for that. We need to make sure that when Congress does it and puts in policies in there that throw out our rights as citizens and even throw out some of our unalienable rights, we have to call them on it and say we're not accepting that. And if that means impeaching a president, then that's what it means. But there's got to be some accountability for going above or outside of what you were elected to do.
Yeah.
And what you promised to do.
And that is a big question. Like I said, it actually comes from another delegate. Let's conclude this with just if you can take a couple minutes and just tell people kind of about the Mia Love campaign and where it's going and just a little message on that.
Okay, well, again, we talked about over 50% of our fellow Americans believe it's okay to take from one and give to another. Those aren't the things that we believe in. It's not what we in Utah value. We believe that you're not entitled to anything you don't own, earn, work for, or pay for yourself. What we've got to do is get our fellow Americans to come along with us. We've got to be able to send a different messenger to Washington that can actually say these things. Now, according to the left, I'm not supposed to exist. And I'm ready and willing to go out and make sure that we eliminate all of the myths that the left has put out there for so long. My focus is going to be on fiscal discipline, getting our economic house in order, limited government, and personal responsibility. That's what I'm going to use all of my political capital on, because I don't believe in remodeling the kitchen when the house is on fire. I want to make sure that we focus on the things that are important. I realize what motivates me is that my daughter, who's 12 years old, when she has a family of her own, will owe over $900,000. But with all that being said, I believe that we can make a difference. But the first difference we have to make is to beat Jim Matheson. And Jim Matheson is 6-0. He has been able to take Republican nominees and define them as being too extreme. And then he picks up the independent votes, he picks up the moderate votes, and he also picks up the women votes. We've got to make sure that we don't give him that formula again. And I can tell you, Jim Matheson has never seen a candidate like me. He's never been up against a candidate like me. Because of who I am and where I come from, he cannot define me the way he has the other 6 that he's come up against, and the way he will the other candidates that he will come up against. And so this race is really important, and I implore you to make sure we don't follow the definition of insanity and doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Make sure we put up a candidate that can beat him, and then we can make a difference in Washington.
Well, Mia, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Everybody
Be
sure to watch the follow-up that I'll give with the interview with Miss Love, and thank you.
Thank you.